Want to get weird? You can follow The Witching Hours on Facebook and Twitter. Join us on YouTube at youtube.com/at The Witching Hours Podcast. Join us on Discord for all of the weirdness. There you will find links to the news, stories, and conversation. And finally, you can purchase The Witching Hours merch at streamlabs.com/The Witching Hours Podcast/merch. Welcome to The Witching Hours Stories. On this version of The Witching Hours, we will do a deep dive into interesting topics in the paranormal, esoteric, and weird. So I hope you enjoy this episode, whenever you are listening to it. Now, The Witching Hours Stories presents the story of Project Pegasus. Time travel, a topic that is quite possibly one of the most disputed topics when discussing fringe science. Time travel has been the focus of countless TV shows, movies, and books. Maybe it seems possible because, well, so many of us have seen it played out so often in fiction. Some mainstream scientists have said that it is a very real possibility, while others question whether time travel can actually happen because of the many paradoxes it creates, which we'll talk more about later. The science still seems to be up in the air. Many people have claimed that they have time traveled with varying degrees of credibility. In this episode of The Witching Hour Stories, we will discuss a person who claims to have traveled in time. This particular story focuses on a man named Andrew Basiago. He claims to have traveled in time starting in 1967, lasting until the 1980s through technology discovered by Nikola Tesla. This story begins with an institution named DARPA, or the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Andrew's father, Raymond F. Basiago, began to work on classified projects for think tanks in the 1950s. Eventually, he asked to continue experiments that were first conducted by Nikola Tesla. This experiment and findings in part by Andrew's father eventually branches out into other major topics like the Philadelphia experiment and Project Montauk. Basiago has also stated that some of the technology of this program came out during the Manhattan Project and the invention of the atomic bomb. This led to a secret government project called Project Pegasus. In 1968, Andrew says he was taken into a building that housed a machine that allowed participants to travel in time. Basiago says that time travel was made possible through papers found in Nikola Tesla's apartment after his death. This led to the events of the Philadelphia experiment, possibly a topic for another show. However, Basiago disputes the known story of the Philadelphia experiment and says that what we know about it is inaccurate. Basiago says that he and other members of Project Pegasus began remote viewing, or what he called psychic time traveling, for the Office of Naval Intelligence in the fall of 1969, starting when he was just 6 years old. The members of this team were called chrononauts. At this first stage, the chrononauts were time traveling in their mind. Now, he states that this was being done to find and retrieve a service member whose name you might be familiar with. The service member was John McCain, who was currently held prisoner in the Vietnam War. After this, methods of time travel began to shift, and Basiago states that he and other participants would be forced into out-of-body experiences. He claims they would be strapped onto tables and would watch spinning spirals above them, which would allow for the OBE to happen. And then they would travel in time. Now, keep in mind, Andrew Basiago is in the 3rd grade at this time. Basiago also makes claim of Project Pegasus using a device based on Tesla's work. Descriptions and interviews sound exactly like what you would expect a Nikola Tesla machine to look like, a system of 2 pillars placed apart from each other that created a field of energy you could walk through the middle. The tech continued to evolve and led to a different machine called the chronovisor, a portal that allowed them to view history through the image inside of this portal. Supposedly, the chrononauts could stand on a stage located in the portal of the chronovisor and interact with history, though they were just a hologram. He claims that the technology changed over the years, and over his time in the project, He has witnessed several different time machines, though they might all be based on the original ideas of Tesla. So, where or when did he travel to? Basiago claims to have traveled to the year 1863 to the Gettysburg battlefield, where he witnessed the Gettysburg Address. His recollection of these events are quite in-depth and candid. In an interview from 2015, he discusses how loud the reception was that Lincoln received, and that he was able to get really close to where Lincoln was sitting before he gave his speech. Maybe even more interesting is not only does he claim to have visited the past and witnessed Lincoln at Gettysburg, but he also claims to be in a photo taken at the event. The picture, he claims, was only discovered years after he returned. He also says that he went to the battlefield at Gettysburg and he saw his father there, but a younger version of him. He said he walked up to his father and said, "Dad, what are you doing here?" And later on, his father told him that it was at that exact moment when Raymond Basiago knew that his son Andrew was supposed to be part of the project. He claims to have witnessed the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. In fact, he was sent so many times he remembers seeing different versions of himself in Ford's Theater. He claims to have traveled to many different points in time, including traveling back to the time of the dinosaurs and many more jumps into different times and places, including a trip to a government base on Mars with a young Barack Obama. Now, this introduces some paradoxes like seeing his father at a younger age at the Gettysburg Address and having a picture taken of himself on the battlefield. So now that we've discussed the introduction of paradoxes, we mentioned that earlier, Basiago has gone pretty in-depth in interviews discussing different kinds of paradoxes. Andrew only becomes part of the project because he runs into his father at the same time-traveling event. He spoke to his father about this, and his father told him it would not be a problem if he did not talk about it, just to keep quiet and everything would be okay. Basiago also brings up another paradox. Did Basiago exist in the photo taken of him in 1863 before he travels from 1972? Well, he says this is a paradox of retrocausation and theorizes that he would have always been in that photograph ever since 1863. This is important to think about because others have theorized that if time travel was possible, it would create alternate timelines. However, Andrew claims that when he traveled back in time to the same points, there were always small differences. Like there would be different ticket takers or very small differences in how things played out, different people walking by him on the street, but that the big events always stayed the same. Like Lincoln always is assassinated, Lincoln always gives the speech. But small differences did change from time to time. Did Andrew Basiago travel in time? That is for you to decide for yourself, but if time travel does exist, what does the future of time travel look like? The possibilities that time travel presents are absolutely unfathomable. If time travel really exists, there could be limitless possibilities that would allow humankind to do wonderful things. But the power of time travel could also have disastrous consequences. That reason alone, I think, would give the government a reason to try to secret away any technology that would provide travel in time. If Basiago is to be believed, the government is still using time travel to study the past and provide teleportation technology.